Tottenham fans. I did a video yesterday or day before about Tottenham's narratives and how I feel they are untrue, and there needed to be a little bit more context into these narratives because the media over-exaggerate them and really make Spurs look worse than it actually is. So I got requested to do a video about narratives about the injuries that we have and this huge narrative that Ange's style of play or Ange's training or the way Ange coaches his players is the reason why we get injuries. Ange is causing the injuries. And this is what I wanted to debunk again, because in my humble opinion, and this is just my opinion, he is not the cause of these injuries. And I'll give you my reasons why. You can disagree with it if you want, but I'll give you my reasons and then we can talk in the comments afterwards. So first of all, let's talk about the injuries and let's put some context into the injuries, why they happened, how they happened. So let's first look at Vicario. Vicario fractured his foot during a game. So it was an impact injury. That's nothing to do with training, nothing to do with style of play. It was an impact injury. So that's just one. Let's look at just Bentancur in another aspect. So Bentancur had an ACL injury, nothing to do with training, nothing to do with style of play. He got back from injury after a long layoff. Then he came back and got tackled hard by, I think it was Cash from Aston Villa, and he was out again. Then when he came back, he had a 7-game ban. None of this was to do with Ange Postecoglou's style or his training. Kulusevski injured his foot in a match. Again, that's nothing to do with Ange Postecoglou or his training. Odegaard came back from a hamstring injury, which apparently is caused by Ange's training or his tactics, but he came back into a Europa League game, overstretched for a ball, if you remember the match. I think it was against Elfsborg, overstretched for it, basically did the splits and injured his hamstring again, which caused him to have surgery on his hamstring. So again, that was just a freak accident. Romero did suffer with a hamstring injury. This may be down to the style of play. This could be, but he was suffering from muscle injuries before Ange Postecoglou even came in. So just put that into context. Van de Ven has been said many times that he has to sprint back too many times, which causes his hamstring injuries. But again, he was suffering with his hamstring before he joined Tottenham Hotspur. And I'll get into this sprinting thing in a minute, because I have another reason why this sprinting thing has nothing to do with Ange's style again. A little bit, because obviously intense running for any athlete will cause injuries at some point if you're fatigued. Let's talk about James Maddison. Maddison's had an ankle injury, which he suffered quite a lot with Leicester before he came to Tottenham and before he was playing under Ange. Even Leicester fans were telling me that you would only get a third of a season out of James Maddison because he gets injured for the rest of the time. So again, is that Ange's fault? Richarlison, he's been injured since he's joined Spurs. He was injured a hell of a lot under Conte, which again, put that into context, is this Ange's fault? And to be fair, Ange has been very patient with Richarlison and gave him a lot of rest time, and he's still getting injured. So again, is this Ange's fault? Mikey Moore, I've got a lot of examples, I'm telling you. Mikey Moore was out with a virus for 2 months. Is that down to Ange's style of play? Is that down to his training? No. And now let's talk about this style of play that I keep talking about. High press, high intensity. Now, let's see who else plays high press, high intensity. Chelsea, Arsenal, City, Liverpool, Bournemouth, Villa, and a few others to name as well that play this high intensity football. It's the Premier League. You have to play high intensity just to compete nowadays. If you don't play high intensity football and high line football, you won't be on the front foot and you're most likely to lose that game nowadays. It's the Premier League. Who doesn't play high intensity? If you're not playing this level of football, then you're not going to win many games, are you? So what about the style of formations? So let's say Ange's style, his formation, his philosophy is the reason why we're getting injuries. Okay, in any other style of football, let's say they play wing backs. What is the job of a wing back? And I'm going to refer this now because of Van der Ven. The, the, the wing backs have to sprint forward and sprint back. That's their job. Sprint forward, put crosses in, sprint back and defend. They do a lot more sprinting back than Van der Ven does. And is that criticised? What about box-to-box midfielders? Their job is to sprint forward, get on the end of things, sprint back and defend. That's a style of play that's been around for many years before Ange came into the Premier League. Has that been ridiculed at all? Has that been criticised? What about players that have played high intensity and not got injured? What about Conor Gallagher last season? He was arguably the guy that ran the most last season, sprinting forward, sprinting back, sideways, covering the wingers, covering the centre-backs, didn't get an injury. Sometimes it could be down to the individual players, not the style of play or not the training. In any system, you're at risk of injury, especially if you can't rotate players, and exactly what we've been going through at the moment. You can get injuries in a pragmatic style of football too. There's been many a team that suffered with injuries. I think Everton went through it a few years ago. They got many injuries and they played defensive football. This happened. He was at Celtic. Ange was at Celtic a few years back, and they were playing twice per week and they were getting injuries, and he persevered with it and it paid off in the end. He kept with his style of play and it paid off. And to add to that, when Celtic were getting a few injuries, not as many as he's getting here at Spurs, and I just went through all of that, the reason why, and it's nothing to do with Ange Postecoglou. Some of it maybe, some of it not. He still went on to win a treble at Celtic. Now, shouldn't that be praised more if he got loads of injuries at Celtic and still won the treble? Should be praised more, in my opinion. So I think we've established it's not his style or his training that's causing this. Some of it may be, but it's an elite league. It's the best league in the world. You have to play with intensity. You have to. Let's look at his training methods. We can all sit back and remember Conte's training pre-season when he was making the players run up and down until they were sick. Everyone praised Conte for that. No one cared about how it might have caused all the injuries. I watched Oso Spurs channel as well, and you need to watch that channel. It's a very good channel. I'll put the link in the description below. He had a sports scientist on that was working with Ange Postecoglou, and he also worked with Pochettino. It turns out Pochettino trained the players harder than Ange does, but he was a lot luckier with injuries. And all you people spreading this narrative that because you've heard it from the media, and I don't blame you because it's easy to brainwash some people. This narrative that he caused all these injuries through his training methods. Firstly, Ange said through that 2-month period when we was getting all those injuries and we could only had 13 available players, he was not hardly training because there was 2 games a week and there was no time to train. Secondly, how many training sessions have you been to, and what has Ange been doing in these training sessions that was causing these injuries? I want you to tell me in the comments below what Ange done in these training sessions to cause these injuries. What was too much for these players? Thirdly, there's a massive contradiction going around saying Ange causes injuries, but the same people are saying that Ange doesn't coach these players, he just stands there with his hands in his pockets. Which one is it? Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video. Do you think this narrative that Ange has caused all these injuries is a little bit harsh considering what I've just explained today in the video? Many of the injuries were impact injuries. Yes, there were a few. Yes, he brought Van der Ven Romero back early, but surely he should get praise now for learning from that and not doing the same again. Thank you for watching. Come on, you Spurs.